It's Dr. Manny. Welcome to Asylum. This is an easy topic, actually, but an important one, and we often overlook it because most of us assume that we know how to set intentions well because intentions pop up in our mind all the time. You know, you intend to go to the fridge, you go and you get something to drink, and you don't really think about it. You know, you don't sit around and think about the architecture of each step because, for the most part, your mind takes care of it. You've learned a certain set of behaviors that get you what you want, things that need to happen, and you create some habits around them, and it's worked so far. But eventually, you get to the point where you start to sense that there are some deeper motivations, some deeper drivers, some deeper passions that you aren't acting on because well, basically, usually it's because you're scared, or you just feel like the time has passed and you don't believe you can do it anymore. You don't think it'll be worth the effort or whatever. Hey, Charmaine, thanks for dropping by. So it's you just assume that intentions are what they are. You know, I've been doing them one way all my life, and that works just fine. And that's literally a limiting belief. Uh, because as long as you believe that your intentions are as they are as you are, and you can do what you've done in the past, and that's the fence around your consciousness, your fence around your existence, then it is. But when you look at the intentions and you start setting them intentionally, explicitly, clearly, and uh, observing the results you get from them, which ones work, what level of abstraction do they need to be at, what environmental triggers do you need to have in place that you pick up? Are you more of an auditory trigger person? Are you more of a visual trigger person? Are you more of an internal trigger person? Are you most effective? Um, which intentions connected to bumping into people, intentions connected to certain landmarks. Um, so I guess before we can dive into that, it's worth looking at how an intention is structured and why you would want to set intentions. You want to set intentions because as a memory structure, as an empirical structure in your mind, intentions are more accessible than other things, other types of memories, like as a structure. And the reason is that the way you set an intention is if this happens, then I will do that. So the if, the one you the cue that you assign in the if part of the statement in your mind when you set the intention. If if I run into Michael, then I will ask him about lunch Friday. So by thinking through that explicitly in your mind, it clarifies, it pulls up the memory of Michael, and it pulls up a memory of your keys, and it holds those two things together. Then what you have to do is at the same time have the emotion of relief, of pleasure, of satisfaction. You have to, in the moment that you're setting this intention, you have to experience the reason. Hey, Dr. David, you have to experience the feeling associated with the reason. And this is the difference between an affirmation and an incantation. Often, an affirmation, you run through the words and you say them mindlessly without the emotion. The emotion is part of the meaning. As such, when you're setting an intention, you want to be present. You want to have a certain presence about you where you're not adding other elements of meaning, and that includes you don't want to set an intention in a grumpy mood. Think to yourself, "I'm going to be at work tomorrow," and as soon as you start thinking about work, you trigger yourself into a bit of a tense, negative state. Drop that part of the memory because you don't need to carry that forward. So just think from a cleaner place. Tomorrow at work, baseline calm equanimity. uh, when I see the clock say noon, or when my alarm goes off at noon, then I will call such and such person for the meeting. And when you set that, you set the emotion then. If you plan then when you're setting the intention to be in a bad mood, then tomorrow when your alarm goes off, you're going to be like, oh, damn, I got to go do the thing at that meeting. I got to make that call. I got to talk to that person. So this is casting and that intention segment, that segment in time in your life in a negative flavor, in a negative mood before the time has even come. You intend to be in a bad mood about it. And what happens is when you set the intention with that negative valence, it becomes a bit of a repellent. the rest of your day, instead of thinking about that event and kind of doing a subconscious rehearsal of it so that it can be prepared for it, the whole time your brain is holding this loop. It's fighting attending the event, fighting thinking about the event, fighting the negative emotions that it's already building up about the event. And really, right on the other side of initiating the event is something positive. If you set it as an intention, if you connect it with a reason, if you make it positively meaningful for you, and if you make, basically you give yourself a motive to do it. So when you set an intention, you want to set it with a feeling of gratitude for having achieved it. They say that a lot, and often what we do is we're like, well, how am I going to have the gratitude now when I don't have it yet? Well, implicit in that is at the time that you're imagining doing the thing, the task that's in the intention, you're already telling yourself that you won't be able to do it, that you won't enjoy doing it. You're already setting these negative valences, these negative aspects. And that's essentially how we set the mood in our consciousness. We set up these plans for all these future events as intentions or as expectations. When you set them as expectations, really, that's when you put the power of determining your mood on something outside of yourself. If you're like, this person is going to come up to me tomorrow and I expect him to make me angry, then sure enough he will, because you prepared yourself for it. Hi Andreas, how you doing? So as you're setting the expectations, you're creating what's called an external locus of control. You're giving away some of your power. You're setting it that you're connecting an environmental event to an emotional response. And that emotional response, you're giving that emotional response the power to limit the choices you're going to make in that moment. Because we make, nowadays they say the frequency you're vibrating at. It's a level of emotional valence. The more negative your emotion, the more narrow-minded and tunnel visioned you are. The scarier you are, the more you're trying to go straight forward and run and not really thinking about anything else. No conversation, no empathy, no depth. As you get to levels of emotion like gratitude, when you set expectations and intentions in that state, then you have a broader, more long-term, forward-looking, less anxious, less gnawing, corrosive way of being. And then you become intentional, you become empowered. You don't, with the intention, you set an action. You say to yourself, when I see this, I'm going to do this. And it's more effective if you set your intentions before your triggers. If you know Michael's coming to bother you at noon, then it might be that you set the intention not to be at your desk at 11:50 until 12:30. So you say, tomorrow, I will, at 11:30, when my alarm goes off, I will get up and leave my desk and go for an afternoon walk. There it is. Now here's the thing. If you're going to go for the afternoon walk, don't piss yourself off and drain your energy being angry about a meeting with Michael that you strategically avoided. You no longer need to worry about that lane of consciousness. Let all that energy go. Now, of course, if Michael is determined to have a meeting with you, then Michael's going to show up later. Hey, awesome work. Love the if-then statements. Also, when then. Yeah, David, thanks for bringing that up. And when then. When my alarm goes off, then I will do such and such. Now, guys, what's important is don't put a negative emotion in there at the same time. Because remember, the emotions are handy for bringing something into your consciousness. Anything that you want to do lightly, quickly, efficiently on autopilot, and you want to make a habit, you want to set without that emotional goo. The emotions kick off a cascade of neuroendocrinological, psychophysiological results, effects, cascades of emotions, cortisol, which kind of loosens up the relationship between your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala. All that stuff happens when you let that cascade of emotions, when you attach things to expectations, when you give up your power to an external locus of control. So instead, set intentions a little bit before that. But here's the thing, reality being reality, when you start an intention set, an intention segment in your day, there are going to be a rack of distractions. Everything gonna come up, from internal distractions, bright ideas, negative talk, self-criticism. There's going to be some stuff trying to encroach in that window of space that you've allocated to do the task. So what you do is you set a set of intentions for that, and those are called distraction intentions. So in the same format, if this, then that. if like say one of my intentions, I do a lot of writing throughout the day, so I set off blocks of writing, 1 hour, 50 minutes of writing, 10 minutes of break. During that 50 minutes of writing about a specific topic, every other idea under the sun is going to come to me, and it's going to be the brightest idea that I swear if I don't go act on immediately, I'm going to forget. Which means in an hour, 50 minutes of writing, I might hop up and out of the chair 12 times until I set what's called a distraction intention that says, if I hop up out of this chair, when I get to the door, I will remind myself to sit back down. Now, what happens with these intentions is if you really, really, really want the outcome, hey, Dr. V, thanks for joining. If I really, really want the outcome, then when you hit the door, you'll say to yourself, I shouldn't go down there and do whatever it is down the hall or whatever. You've given yourself an opportunity to reevaluate that choice. And if you truly wanted if you really want the outcome that's in the reason, then each time you hit the door, you'll remind yourself, and then you'll go sit back down. Thank you, Dr. V. Well played. So, when you're setting these intentions, you set them nested. You have to set them so specifically that things in the environment trigger them. And you have to set them without that cascade of emotions, of negative emotions associated with a negative outcome. So that means you have to set them with positive expectancy. You have to set them with the expectation that they will work. And what that allows you to do is to set them as what's called chained intentions. When I get downstairs, then I will open the fridge. When I open the fridge, then I will look for the ice cream. When I get the ice cream, then I will get the scooper. Then I will close the fridge door, the freezer door. These are small micro steps, but it goes to the point that you want to check where in your habit set you can add an intention in things that you're already doing, things that are already happening in your environment, emotions you're already feeling. Like one of mine in the morning is when I wake up in the morning, then I will do my morning meditation. Now, what happens is when I'll do it fine. Certain mornings, the mood will hit me and I won't feel like doing it. But at the same time, I will have accessible in my memory the reminder that I had made the commitment to myself that when I got up, I would do this morning meditation. So then you have a choice. You've introduced that choice. If you choose not to do it, then you know you didn't do it today. If you didn't do it tomorrow, if you didn't do it 3 days in a row and you noticed you didn't do it 3 days in a row, you got to ask yourself your level of commitment to the outcome that you've connected that intention to, the reason that I mentioned earlier. Thank you, Dr. V. Dr. V says, love learning about triggers and positive expectations. Thank you. Hey, Jen. So yeah, Dr. V, a ritual. Yeah, so you tie your intentions to chains of actions. You create these stacks of if-thens, but thing about it is you don't load them up with emotions, expectations, and you don't carry all the emotion associated with all the negative possible outcomes. You focus entirely on the positive outcome, knowing that you've thought about the negative outcomes, you've thought about the distractions, you've thought about the obstacles, you've thought about, and here's the thing, most rituals, you're doing them so often that you don't have to think of all the outcomes before you set out to do it. Set out and take that first step and expect to hit the wall face first and add a new intention. A couple of days in, you might find that you're getting tired in the chair. When I find myself getting tired in the chair, I will walk one lap around the building and then come back and sit down. And then you add an intention in there. If you find that you walk one lap around the building and you're not making it back to your chair for an hour and you meant to do for 20 minutes, you will say, when I'm walking my lap around the building, if I run into someone that causes me to jump into a conversation, I will check the time. Then I will check the time to see how much time I have to get back to my desk. And you stack these intentions. You put one after another, and you store your desired outcomes within these chains of intentions, so that throughout your day you're wandering through a reality that you've essentially designed more intentionally to lead to the outcomes that you want in the long term, without having to sit there and think all the time, am I doing the right thing? Am I on track? How distracted am I? How long have I not been productive? And it gives you a measure of, it gives you something more positive and inspiring to attach your attention to and your emotions to. And it allows you to step back sometimes and say, this is not working. How do I know it's not working? Because I'm spending a lot of time in these distraction intentions, or I'm spending a lot of time in these expectations and these negative emotional states that if I had set intentions correctly, I either would not be in this place, I would not be talking to this person, I would not be this deeply engaged in this conversation, I would not have asked these questions, I would not have thought these thoughts, I would not have felt these things. Because the second you feel them, you could make a note to yourself. If I sit down to talk to Fred and Fred brings up mama, because Fred always brings up mama and it always leads to an argument. If I sit down to talk to Fred and Fred brings up mama, I'm going to tell Fred, let's talk about something else. And then you get to that point in the conversation, Fred brings up mama, and it's uncomfortable for a moment. Because the habit you have is of letting Fred piss you off every time he brings up mama. So your brain going to be like, I had said that next time Fred brought up mama, I would tell him I don't want to talk about it. And so your brain will pop up that choice in that moment. It lets you remain present, but it lets you know that you trust your unconscious to bring up these planned notifications, for lack of a better word, because we're in a culture now that knows all about notifications. So by architecting your days around these intentions and watching the efficacy, how effective those intentions are in getting you one step at a time, doing the right things at the right time with as little negative emotions, with as little drain, with as little regret and negative story, negative talk, guilting yourself, telling yourself how stupid you are, how clumsy you are, how whatever negative talk that may be lingering there from the past. All that energy instead goes into setting these intentions, checking the metrics on these intentions, seeing how these intentions are most effectively chained together, having your schedule essentially be made up of living in these intentional spaces with the right people, doing the right things, thinking about the right things, and less time managed by expectations or by outside reward and punishment, temptation and threat, just different elements that aren't relevant to the path that you're on and where you're trying to go. So that's what happens when you're setting intentions. Hopefully I covered that thoroughly. Now, I'd like to let you know that this is a part of my mindset training, because a lot of people have been asking me what exactly is in the mindset program that I've launched. I've launched a small group mindset coaching program that meets once a week. We're going to be starting in the next couple of weeks. So if you'd be interested in finding out more about the framework, other ways to organize your thought process so that you're more in alignment with your values, you have more clarity, and you're doing more of the things you want to do with your energy, as opposed to fighting fires, feeling stuck, tearing yourself down. So more purpose-driven, focused, nurturing, self-care based conversations with yourself. So I'll be starting that program. So if you're interested in that, send me a private message as always. Thanks for joining me in Asylum. Dr. Manny, I'm out.